So now that we have Pacman working, it's time to get our ghosts in here. This next part is a little bit complicated, but that's okay. We can handle it. So the complicated part comes into the fact that the ghost doesn't freely move around in the same way that Pacman does. They have to be inside of this home when the game starts. So we're going to need to make 3 nodes, one for the left, one for the center, and one for the right. But we have to make sure the ghost can't go back into home, because after the game starts, they can't go back into home unless you eat them with a power pellet. So we're going to need to make sure that the nodes don't recognize each other as possible nodes that you're able to go to. So first off, let's grab this node right here. And to make this easier, we're going to create another empty game object, and we're going to use it as a folder, and we're going to call this ghost nodes. And then we're going to paste as child. So now we just have a random node here. And we're going to move it over to about 0. Just make sure it's in the middle. I guess our background is slightly off, but that's fine. And then we're going to remove the pellet. Actually, let's keep the pellet just so we can see the node. So we have our start node, and we are just going to name this start. This is going to be where the ghost is first at when they get it home. So then we're going to copy it, and we're going to call this one center. And we're going to move this down to the center. We're just going to move the center node down to 0. And then I can't really see because this is in the way. So I'm just going to go to game. And you can see it is not in the center. So, whoops, we're going to just drag it up a little bit. And that should be fine. We can always adjust the values later. So then copy paste. We'll set this one as left. And then we'll make another one and set this one as right. And then we're just going to drag it over a little bit. Okay, so that looks about right. So that is going to be where each one of our ghosts are going to start. So the red ghost is going to start up here, and then I believe it's pink, blue, and orange. So since the distance between these is greater than the distance that the raycast will detect, we're going to have to manually put in the values ourselves, which is completely fine. But if we do it right now and then we start the game, the raycast will not detect anything and it'll delete anything we enter right now. So what we're going to have to do is grab center, left, and right. We're not going to affect our start node here because we do want that to detect the other ones. So grab center, left, and right, and then we're going to add a new tag called ghost node. And now we can give these the tag of ghost node. So now in center, we can say node left. We can say node right. We can move left. We can move right. Left, we're just going to have a right node, and we can move right. Right, we're going to put in our left node. Or sorry, I got that backwards. In our left node, we want to put in center for the node to the right. And then for our right node, we want to put in center as our node to the left. So just in case you missed that, I'll click this one's center. This one is left. And this one is right. Okay, so if we're in our left node, we can move to the right to get to the center. And if we're in the center, we can move to the right to get to right, we can move left to get to left, etc. Now center, we're also going to be able to want to move up, and we're going to want to get our start node in there manually. So now if we load the game, because we tagged them as ghost node, or actually it got set to undefined for, oh, there we go. If we click them now, you'll notice the values are still there. Whereas if we had removed, or if we had set the tag to be node, it would shoot a raycast out, nothing would be in the distance, and it would turn all of those variables off. All right, so let's actually get a ghost in here. We're going to select create empty, and we're just going to type in red. I could name them the actual names of the ghosts, but I assume most of you don't know the actual names of the ghosts, so we're just going to color code it. Next, we're going to give it an enemy controller, which we will be creating. And then we're going to give it the movement controller. We're also going to give it a tag of enemy. And we're going to give it a sprite renderer, which is going to be in our sprites. And we're just going to set it to this one right here. And then that is huge, so we're going to need to really scale that down. Let's go like 0.2. 0.2. Make sure it's about the same size as Pacman. That's still way too big. 0.1, 0.1. Now that's too small. So let's meet somewhere in the middle. 0.05, 0.05, or sorry, 0.15, 0.15. And that looks pretty good. Now you're going to notice that the color is white. That's because we're going to be manually setting our color using the exact same template. We'll get to the specifics after. For now, too, we can give it a child, which is going to be its eyes. And we're going to give that a sprite renderer. And we'll just stick this on there for now. And we want to make sure this is above the ghost. Maybe make them a little bit smaller. That's too small. Okay. And then bring them up a little bit. Okay, that's looking pretty nice. Now the actual color code for the ghost is 250.00. So we can set this to 250.00. All right, so we have our ghost now, and we are going to just minimize this so that it's not in our way. And we're going to put the ghost into our left node, right about there. And we're just going to start testing all of our nodes. So nothing here works. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to know what state we're in. So we're going to create something called an enum. And this is just going to basically be a bunch of different states that our ghost can be in. So we're going to have public enum ghost node states enum. And we can have our ghost set to respawning. They can be in our left node. They can be in our right node. They can be in our center node. They can be in our start node. And they can be moving in nodes. Okay, so respawning means we ate them. Left node means they're starting out in the left node, etc. And start node is up here. So what we're going to do is if our ghost is in home, we're going to ask what state we're in. If we're in left, we need to move to center. If we're in center, we need to move to start. And then if we're in the start, we need to start moving through our nodes. So now that we have our enum, we actually need to create a variable that will hold one of those values. So we're just going to do public ghost node state enum ghost node state. And on awake, this is where we need to set which state we're in. So we're going to need to set another, or create another enum called ghost color, red, blue, pink, and orange. Okay, so if our color is red, we're going to be starting at start. So if, oh, whoops. And then public, ghost color, ghost color. Actually, I would prefer to rename this from ghost color to ghost type. And then we're going to set this in our inspector. So then we're going to say if ghost type equals ghost type dot red, then ghost node state equals ghost node state enum dot start node. Else if ghost type equals pink, we're going to set ourselves on the center node. If we are blue, we're going to set ourselves on the left node. And if we are orange, we will set ourselves to the right node. Next up, we want to be able to reference every single one of those nodes in our home and start. So public game object, ghost node left, and you know the drill, right, center, start. Now, if we go back and look at Pacman, we're going to see that when we first start the game, we're actually setting our current node in our movement controller to be our start node. So what we're going to do with our ghosts is we're going to do the same thing, except for we're going to do it programmatically. So in our enemy controller, we're going to reference our movement controller. So public movement controller, movement controller. Movement controller equals get component, movement controller. And now we're going to keep the reference to our starting node. So starting node. And we're going to say starting node equals ghost node start. Starting node equals ghost node center. Because remember, we need to be able to get back to this node when we're respawning. So we need to always keep track of the first node that we started on. Starting node equals ghost node right. And then once we have our starting node, we are going to manually set our movement controller. We're going to manually set its current node. Dot current node equals starting node. Okay, let's save that. Now we need to make sure that we drag in these nodes into our ghost enemy controller. So we're going to load up the game, and because we are the red ghost, you're going to notice that they instantly move to the start node and then start moving left, and it happened really quick, which is fine. But now let's pretend that we're the blue node, or the blue ghost, because the blue ghost is the one that would actually be here. So we just set this ghost type to be blue. And now if we load the game, I believe we should move to the node that we're on right now. So it is on the left node. So that's really good. Now, if we enter in, if we go to ghost and enter in, you'll notice that we have left as the direction, and it's not allowing us to move left. This is good. What if we set it to right? Okay, so it is going to move all the way to the right. If we set it to left, it's going to keep moving as though it was just a regular node. We don't want this to happen. We want the ghost to make a new decision every single time it reaches the center of one of these nodes. So once it reaches the center of the center node, it should then immediately recognize that it wants to leave and change its direction to be up. So basically what we need to do is we need to know every single time we reach the center of a node as a ghost, which we're going to need to do anyway because that's how they're going to be making their decisions. Pacman makes them through the user using the keyboard. The ghosts are going to need to make them on the fly. So in our enemy controller, we're just going to type in public reached center of node. Oh, I forgot to put void. And let's send in the node controller. Okay, so let's go to our movement controller. If our position is right, then we know we're at the center of the node. So we're just going to say if is ghost, which is a variable that we have not created yet. Then we're going to get component enemy controller dot reached center of node and send in this. So then we're going to create a public bool is ghost equal to false. Oh, whoops, we actually want to send our current node controller. Okay, so now if we go back to our inspector, you'll notice under movement controller, there's going to be another option that comes up that says is ghost. And we're going to check that because we're the ghost. So if we are the ghost, every time we reach the center of the node, it's going to alert us that we reached the center of the node. So we're going to go back to our enemy controller. And we're going to have another variable called public bool ready to leave home equal to false. And basically, we want our ghosts to stay in their ghost house for a little bit of time. We don't want them all to come out at the exact same time. So we're only going to tell our movement controller to start moving once we're ready to leave home. So we're going to say if ghost node state equals ghost node states enum dot moving in nodes, determine next game node to go to, else if ghost node state equals respawning, oh whoops, ghost node states enum dot respawning, determine quickest direction to home, else if we are ready to leave home, then we're going to say if ghost node state equals ghost node state enum dot left node, then ghost node state equals ghost node state enum dot center, else if our ghost node state is the right node. Actually, we can say if ghost node state equals left node or ghost node state equals ghost node state's enum dot right node, then we're going to want to go to the center. Else if our state is already center, dot center, we're going to want to move to start. Else if we are in start, then we are going to be moving in our nodes. Okay, so that was a lot to unpack, and we're definitely not done, but basically we're saying if we are ready to leave home, which makes sense, we have the variable ready to leave home. If we are in the left or right home node, move to the center. if we are in the center node, move to the start node. If we are in the start node, start moving around in the game. Oh, and I just realized we actually can't have this or. So we're going to need to cut it and then just make another else if. And this is if we are in the right home node, move to the center. And the reason why we can't have them in the exact same one is because this is where we're going to be setting our direction now. So movement controller dot set direction right, movement controller dot set direction left, and then up, and then we'll just do left for now. Okay, so let's go over exactly what's happening. We're going to put our ghost speed down to like 0.1. Maybe like 0.3 just so it's not too slow. So the first thing our ghost is going to do, because its current node is automatically going to be the left node, it is going to... Wow, is that even moving? Oh, yeah, so this is actually good. We're not moving because we're not ready to leave home. So if we check off this ready to leave home box, it's going to say, okay, our current state is left node, so we want to move to the center node. And then once we reach there, we're going to want to move to the start node. And once there, we want to start moving in nodes. And this is going to have completely different logic. So each ghost has its own AI with its own different logic. So we'll handle that after, once it's moving through the nodes. But this is already working really well. So let's sort of do a little bit of a recap. So all we tell our movement controller basically is what direction we want to move in. Now Pacman's really easy because they can just set their direction using the arrow keys and there's no thought process to it. We're the ones that decide it. But the ghosts are a little more complicated. So when we reach the center of the node, before we use our direction, we tell the ghost that we reached the center of the node. Then it calls the reach center of the node, and it determines based on what state we're in, which direction we want to go to. So if we're in our left node, we want to set our current state to center node so that we can use it later once we reach the center node. And then we want to set our movement controller direction to right, because to get from left to the center, we have to go right. Then once this function's done, it continues off right here. So the function completes, and now our direction is set. It continues to go down. We're not in a warp node. And it says get node from direction, which is whatever just got set in our last function. And then it basically just does what Pacman's does from there on. So if we set our ghost to actually be orange. So let's load up the game. So now you're going to notice the ghost goes towards the correct spot, but it's actually going to continue moving left because as soon as the game starts, we have last moving direction set to left, which is good for Pacman, but not good for the ghosts. So if we go to our movement controller, you can see here, last moving direction is set to left. We don't want to do that. We're just going to remove that. And then in our player controller, we are going to say movement controller dot last moving direction equals left. So now it's just for our player. And then if we go back and load the game, our direction should be technically empty until we select ready to leave home. Let's try it again. Now it shouldn't move. Great. So now it should move left to the center and then up to start. And then it should just start moving. So this is really awesome. We could technically start adding all the ghosts in here now, but instead we're just going to focus on doing them one at a time.